I didn't expect to be seated next to the kitchen at my own sister's wedding, but I should have. The second I saw that printed escort card, Delaney Blake, table 14, I knew they couldn't even get my name right. Delilah. Not Delaney. Not that anyone cared enough to notice. I stood there for a second, just staring at that little white card. Script font. Gold foil. So fancy. So fake. I took a breath, smiled like I wasn't screaming inside, and made my way to the overflow table, the one tucked so far back it may as well have been in the parking lot. To my left, a swinging door and a whiff of garlic bread. To my right, a stranger arguing with a toddler over a dinner roll. No one at this table had a last name matching mine. No one had been in any of the family portraits. But apparently, this is where I belonged. Still, I smiled. I nodded. I even complimented the bridesmaid dresses. Because that's what you do, right? When you're the forgotten daughter, you keep the peace. You stay quiet. You don't make waves. Even when the MC mispronounces your name during the toasts. Let's raise a glass to our beautiful bride, Avery and her loving family, Charles Margot and, Delaney. My parents didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't bother to correct him. They just raised their glasses. And I raised mine too, because pretending is easier than explaining. I sat there frozen in a moment I'd lived 100 times, present but invisible, included but only technically. I watched Avery shine under the fairy lights in her designer dress, surrounded by applause and admiration. And I thought, how many times do you have to be overlooked before you start believing you were never worth looking at in the first place? I was about to slip out. No goodbyes, no scene, just vanish quietly like always. And that's when it happened. A man, tall, tuxedo tie slightly loosened, slid into the empty chair beside me like he owned the place. He didn't look at me at first, just leaned back, draped one arm casually over the chair, and whispered under his breath, "Look miserable one more second, and I'm crashing this wedding with you. Just pretend we're together." I blinked. He finally turned his head, and I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Not pity. Recognition, like he saw through the facade I'd been perfecting for decades. I almost laughed, almost cried. Maybe both. "Who are you?" I asked. He grinned. "Nico, table 9. I bailed. "Why?" I asked. He leaned closer, dropping his voice like a secret. "Because I watched you sit here for 20 minutes and no one even said your name right." I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't. Instead, I let the silence stretch just long enough for the band to start playing something that sounded like hope. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel completely alone. He tapped his glass against mine. To crashing weddings and rewriting stories. I didn't toast back. But I didn't leave either. And that was the beginning of everything. You ever wonder when it starts? That moment when a family decides who's the star and who's just the background noise. For me, it started before I even had baby teeth. Avery came out glowing. Perfect skin, perfect curls, perfect everything. Mom used to say, "She's got that sparkle, that pageant face." And she did. She could walk into a room and everyone would orbit around her. Then there was me, Delilah Blake, too quiet, too serious, too much time spent talking to herself. Or, as my mother liked to put it, the weird one. While Avery was out winning trophies and posing for Christmas cards, I was in my closet with a toy microphone pretending to be a news anchor. I'd sit there surrounded by hanging coats, reading fake headlines to an audience of stuffed animals that never interrupted. That closet was the only place in that house where I could actually hear myself think. When Avery brought home a medal, the whole family went out for ice cream. When I brought home a journalism award from the regional competition, Mom looked at the certificate and said, "That's cute, honey. But why can't you be more like Avery?" That one stuck with me. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it was so expected, almost rehearsed. Dad wasn't any better. He only calls me when his phone freezes or the Wi-Fi stops working. Not to talk, not to ask how I'm doing. Just, hey kid, can you fix this thing for me? Then silence for another 3 months. So yeah, I built something on my own. A podcast. Started small in my apartment with a mic I bought secondhand and an audience of 12. Now it's 2.2 million monthly listeners. Top charts, sponsorship deals, my own studio. Everything I ever dreamed of and not a single mention at family dinners. Sometimes I wonder if they even know what I do. If they've ever typed my name into Spotify. If they've ever heard my voice when I wasn't saying pass the salt. And yet tonight, this wedding, the final reminder that I'm just a supporting character in the Blake family saga. Because guess who helped pay for this picture-perfect vineyard wedding me? I wired $10,000 when mom said they were a little short on deposits. They didn't even say thank you. They listed me as +0 on the guest list. Used my money for Avery's designer cake. The same cake everyone's taking selfies with right now. Hashtags and champagne and happy tears while I'm hiding near the kitchen with a stranger who saw me before my own parents did. Funny how life works, isn't it? You spend years building a voice that reaches millions, but the people you wanted to hear it most, they never tuned in. I guess that's what it means to be the other daughter. The one who funds the dream, but never gets invited into the picture. He had one of those smiles, the kind that felt like an inside joke you hadn't heard yet. I looked at him, half skeptical, half curious. You do this a lot, I asked. Crash weddings, only when the bride's sister looks like she's 2 minutes from torching the whole vineyard. That actually made me laugh, like a real one, which was weird. I hadn't laughed like that all day. He held out his hand. Nico Mercer. I shook it because manners still matter when you're raised by Margot Blake. Delilah. I know, he said. I thought your name was Delaney, I shot back. He smirked. I listened to your show. Dead Air Confessions. Right. That stopped me. You know my podcast, he shrugged casual. I ghostwrite for public figures. Used to work in TV. Your voice has that thing, command and ache all at once. And just like that, I forgot about the garlic bread and the misprinted place card. For the rest of the reception, we leaned into the lie. He was my +1. We'd met at a cafe in Soho. He spilled espresso on my manuscript. I told him he owed me a drink. One fake story spun out like silk between us. People believed it. They wanted to. Suddenly, waiters started refilling my champagne. Cousins I hadn't seen in years actually remembered my name. Avery gave me that tight-lipped smile she saves for when she's losing control of a room. Even my mom came over. Oh, Nico, would you mind taking a few photos of the family? The words scratched my throat like sandpaper. But Nico just took the phone and snapped the pictures, then whispered, Your sister blinked. Should we try that again? I almost kissed him for that line alone. Somewhere between the fake first date story and the choreographed couple poses, I realized something strange. I felt seen. Like actually seen, not in the way people look through you, not the kind of scene you beg for by being useful. This was different. He wasn't buying the performance. Not the smile, not the small talk, not the borrowed confidence. And at one point, when I dropped my fork during dinner and my hand shook as I picked it up, he just looked at me. Not with pity, but like someone who recognized the signs because they'd lived them too. When the night started winding down and the DJ put on that slow acoustic cover, every wedding ends with, I stood up to leave. That's when Nico leaned in, lowered his voice and said, Don't let them edit you out of your own life story. And then he walked away. No number, no goodbye. Just that line, like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't realized I was writing. And me? I just stood there in a vineyard, lit with fairy lights, wondering how a stranger saw more of me in one night than my family had in 29 years. I was 13 when I made my first story. Not a school assignment, not a group project, a real one. My words, my voice, my idea. I dragged my dad's old tape recorder into my bedroom closet, surrounded myself with jackets and winter coats to muffle the sound, clipped a tiny reading lamp to the wire shelf above me. That closet became my studio, my secret, my safe space. I remember holding that cheap mic with both hands, heart racing, whispering into the void, like someone was actually listening. Live from Willow Creek, this is Delilah Blake, and today we're talking about things no one wants to say out loud. It was about loneliness. At 13. Go figure. And just when I hit record again, bang, my dad's voice thundering through the door. Turn that crap off, the game's on. I froze, didn't say a word, didn't even breathe. That's the thing about growing up in a house where other people's needs always came first. You get really good at disappearing. From that day on, I only recorded when the house was empty. When no one could hear me, when no one could tell me I was too much. By the time I hit high school, I had written, produced, and edited over 50 fictional broadcasts. No one ever heard them. Not even my friends. They lived on USB drives hidden in a shoebox under my bed. I thought things might change in college. That maybe I'd finally earn a seat at the table. I studied communications, radio, journalism, everything that felt like me. Senior year, I walked across that graduation stage with honors. Summa cum laude, a medal around my neck, my name called out loud and clear. I turned to the audience, and all I saw was empty chairs. No mom, no dad, no Avery, not even a card, no explanation. I took a picture with my professor instead. She framed it for me, said I'd make a great storyteller one day. That was the only frame I ever got with my name in it. Fast forward a few years, I finally hit 1 million downloads on my podcast. 1 million people, listening, caring, coming back week after week. I texted my mom, told her the news, sent the link. She responded 3 days later. Oh, that thing is still going. Good for you, sweetie. Sweetie. Like I was 6, like I had just made a finger painting, not built a company. Every win I had was met with a shrug, or worse, redirected toward whatever Avery was doing. If I published an investigative series, Avery ran a successful bridal shoot. If I got a mention in Rolling Stone, Avery posted her engagement photos and got 2,000 likes in 20 minutes. They never said it outright, but it was always there. This unspoken belief that my work was just filler. Something to keep me busy until I got married or got tired. But I didn't get tired. I got sharper, quieter, and louder all at once. Because you can only be ignored for so long before your silence becomes a scream. And my mind came through a microphone. Every whisper, every story, every truth I'd buried, I poured it into that podcast like gasoline. They didn't know it. But while they were watching Avery walk down the aisle, I was building something that would outlast every cake, every photo, every applause. Something that couldn't be ignored forever, even by them. A week after the wedding, something wild happened. My podcast hit #1, not in a niche category, not in society and culture, or indie voices. No. #1 overall, Spotify, Apple, every chart you can name, the episode Invisible Daughters. What happens when you're loved last. I'd written it straight from the rawest part of me. No filters, no polish, just the truth. Apparently, it resonated. Millions of people downloaded it within days. Strangers sent messages that said, I thought it was just me. I finally feel seen. Your story is my story. It should have felt like a homecoming. Validation. Arrival. But when I checked my phone, no text from mom, no email from dad, no congrats or heard your episode, not even a heart emoji, just silence. Avery, meanwhile, was on a yacht in Italy, posting cappuccino selfies with captions like, married life, but make it Mediterranean. And I told myself, it's fine. You don't need their approval anymore. This is your moment. Claim it. And then, an email. Subject line, can we talk about helping Avery? I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it. Something in my chest already knew. I finally clicked it open, and there it was, a wall of polite manipulation. Your sister and her husband are in a bit of a financial rough patch. They're hoping to launch a boutique bakery, Avery's dream. You know how long she's wanted this. You've done so well, Delilah. you could help but give her the same chance. Same chance I built everything from scratch. Piece by piece. Alone. I scrolled further. Mom added, Avery supported you emotionally all those years. This could be your way of returning the favor. I stared at that line for a long time. Emotionally supported me, Avery never even listened to a single episode. She still calls it your little audio thing. At Thanksgiving, she asked if I still do voiceovers for YouTube or whatever, but sure. Let's pretend she was my personal cheerleader. I wrote back one sentence. I'm not interested in investing at this time. Simple. Clear. Done. Or so I thought. 2 days later, Avery posted a story on Instagram, a black screen, with white text that read, Family should lift each other up, not tear each other down. No tags, no names, but everyone who knew us knew. I brushed it off, tried to focus on work. Until my assistant forwarded me an email flagged urgent. It was from a sponsor, one of our biggest. They'd received a message from someone claiming to be concerned about the tone of my show, that it was getting too negative, that it might be alienating family audiences. The email was signed by Avery's husband. And just like that, I wasn't angry. I was done. Done playing polite. Done pretending family meant support. Done letting people cash in on a version of me they never helped build. Because now, finally, they noticed me. But not because they were proud. Not because they loved me. They noticed me because they needed something. And I wasn't going to give it to them. Not this time. Not anymore. There's a moment right before you hit record where your hands hover over the mic like you're holding a match to gasoline. And you ask yourself, am I really gonna say this out loud? That night I did. No script, no sponsors, no fake pep in my voice. Just me. And the silence I've been screaming into since I was a kid. I called the episode The Guest List I Wasn't On. And no, I didn't name names, didn't drag anyone, didn't air the dirty laundry. I just told the truth about being the daughter who plans the party, pays for the cake, and still doesn't get a seat at the table. The daughter who gets your Wi-Fi, working your files, recovered your wedding deposits, paid but never your attention. The one who smiles through the family photos while wondering if anyone would notice if she disappeared. I said what I had swallowed for years, that some daughters only matter when they're useful, when they're covering rent, or editing resumes, or cleaning up messes. Not when they're celebrating, not when they're winning, not when they need to be seen. And something about that hit a nerve. Within 48 hours, the episode exploded. 10 million streams. My inbox turned into a therapy group chat. Thousands of women writing in from every corner of the world. I'm the invisible daughter, too. My family only calls when they need money. I cried in the parking lot after listening. Thank you. Then came the media. An op-ed called me the Nora Ephron of podcasting pain. Another headline read, What happens when the quiet one finally speaks? I should have felt powerful. I should have felt free. But then, the retaliation started. First came Avery's tweet. Sisters should protect secrets, not sell them. No name, no tag. But again, we all knew. Then a voicemail from my mom, her voice trembling like she'd just watched someone die. She said, Your father hasn't slept in 2 days, Delilah. What you're doing, it's not fair. Fair. You know what's not fair? Walking across a college graduation stage alone, reading your name in Forbes before ever hearing it from your parents' mouths, watching them cheer louder for a bread recipe than they ever did for your biggest creative milestone. But I didn't say any of that. I just hit block. First mom, then Avery, then dad, and for the first time in my life, the silence felt like mine. Like a boundary, not a punishment. I had spent years tiptoeing around other people's comfort, worried that being honest would make me difficult, that speaking up would make me ungrateful. But the truth, speaking up, didn't make me ungrateful. It made me visible to myself, to others. to a million strangers who saw me clearer than my own blood ever did. They went silent. But I kept talking. Time passed. Months, actually. The kind of months where everything changes, but nothing really feels different. I kept my head down, focused on building. I bought a downtown studio, hired a team, launched 3 new shows. Forbes added me to their 30 under 30 list. I was in the same column as tech billionaires and best-selling authors. My parents didn't say a word. Not that I was expecting them to. I stopped checking for their names in my inbox. Stopped hoping a missed call meant something good. Stopped waiting for them to care. But then one night, around 10:45 p.m., a new name popped into my email. Nolan J. I didn't recognize it at first. Just a subject line that said invisible too. I almost didn't open it, but something told me to. And when I did, I had to sit down. The message was short. Maybe 6 sentences, but I read it 5 times. I listened to your story about invisible girls, it said. I feel invisible too. Can we talk? It was signed Nolan, Avery's stepson, 10 years old. He found me through the podcast, said he listened to it on his mom's phone when she forgot to log out of Spotify. That one sentence, I feel invisible too. It cracked something open in me I didn't even know was still closed. So we met. At a little bookstore cafe downtown. Neutral ground. Public. I didn't know what to expect. Some version of Avery in miniature. Some child sent to guilt me into reconnecting. But Nolan was just a kid. Quiet, intense, observant. He sat across from me like we were meeting for a secret mission. Like he already knew I wouldn't talk down to him. And he was right. He didn't order anything. Just clutched a little notebook in his lap. After a few minutes of silence, he looked up and said, I don't want to play football. I blinked. Okay, I said gently. You don't have to. My dad says I'm built for it, that it's in my blood. But I don't care about football. I want to write stories. Like you. Then without another word, he slid the notebook across the table. I wrote my first one last week, he said, and I wanted you to have it. I didn't cry. Not right then, but my throat tightened so hard I couldn't speak. On the front of the notebook was a sticker, a microphone, the same one from my podcast logo. I flipped it open. The first line of his story. There was a boy who couldn't be seen until he made himself heard, and in that moment, I saw myself. Not in the mirror, not in the press, not in some glossy magazine spread. I saw myself in a 10-year-old boy who'd been told to be something he wasn't, who found me because someone else tried to erase him, and suddenly everything made sense. Why I told my story, why it mattered, why it wasn't just about me. I looked at Nolan and said, Hey, can I tell you a secret? He nodded. I didn't know I was allowed to be seen either. Not until I started writing anyway. And even then it took time. He leaned in, eyes wide. Will it take a long time for me too? Maybe I said, but if you keep writing, someone will find you. He smiled then. A real one. Not the kind you're told to give for the camera. The kind that comes from being understood. Before he left, he looked up and asked, Do you think one day I could record something too? I smiled back. Not one day. Someday soon. And when you're ready, I'll teach you. And I meant it. Every word. Because maybe this cycle ends with him. Not with a scream. Not with a fight. But with a whisper. Finally being heard. A week after our cafe meeting, Nolan showed up at my studio lobby holding a backpack almost as big as he was. Inside, a stack of notebooks, a USB drive, and a very serious expression. I'm ready, he said. So, we got to work. I taught him how to record room tone, how to sit still when you're nervous, how to take a breath before every sentence. He asked if he could write his own intro. I said absolutely. 2 hours later, he slid me a handwritten card that read, Hi, my name is Nolan. I'm 10 and I tell the truth. We recorded it together. Then I showed him how to mix it, then how to upload it. And when he hit publish, I watched his whole face light up like someone had finally turned the volume up on his life. He left that day holding a brand new mic I had wrapped in a simple blue box. No card, no speech, just a quiet gift for a quiet kid who'd finally found his voice. And later that week, I recorded something too. A bonus episode. No ads, no names. Just a story about a boy who wanted to be heard and a woman who used to be just like him. I called it The Cycle Breakers. It was about how healing doesn't always come from apologies, or family, or blood. Sometimes it shows up in a bookstore cafe wearing sneakers 2 sizes too big and carrying a notebook full of hope. I said some of us are born into silence, but that doesn't mean we stay there. Sometimes we whisper, sometimes we thunder, and apparently people were listening. Again. The episode went viral in less than 24 hours. Streaming numbers shattered every record I'd set before. Messages poured in. Agents, editors, journalists, teachers, mothers, sons, daughters. Then an email, a literary agent in New York. She'd heard the episode. She'd been following my work. Her subject line, "Let's talk the daughters they forgot," could be a book. I didn't even hesitate. I wrote back, "Yes, let's." And then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't seen since the wedding. "Nico, dinner to celebrate." Or should I bring my mic and crash another wedding? I smiled so hard I forgot to reply for a minute. Then I texted back, "Come hungry," and bring a pen. There's more story left to write. And this time, it wasn't a lie. It wasn't a performance. It was real. Every single word of it. Mornings feel different now. I used to wake up bracing for silence. Now I wake up to messages from strangers who feel like family. People I've never met, but who heard me. I stand in my studio, my network now. Not just a show. 15 people on staff. Dozens of creators. Millions of listeners. And on the back wall, there's a gallery we built just for us. Fan letters, podcast awards, a printed headline in a shadow box frame that reads, "She made millions," listening to the voices no one else heard. Dead center at eye level is the thing that started it all. That cracked plastic microphone, the one I hid in my closet when I was 13, still taped up with yellowing Scotch tape, still marked with a shaky DB, I carved with a safety pin. Right beside it, Nolan's storybook. Printed, laminated, signed in purple ink. Thanks for hearing me, Nolan. I stare at that shelf sometimes longer than I mean to. Not out of pride, but because it reminds me how far a voice can travel when you stop waiting for permission to use it. There's one last thing I do before I wrap the day. One last episode to close the season. I sit at the mic, take a breath, hit record, and I say, if your family never clapped for your voice, find people who will lean in closer. Pause. Because someone out there needs to hear exactly what you've been silenced for. I upload it, check the levels, smile, and I hope wherever you're listening from, you hear me when I say this. If this story sounded like yours, you're not alone. Now I want to hear your voice. Tell me below what's something you were told to stay quiet about. Comment your story. You never know who it'll help. And don't forget, we drop new stories just like this every single day. Follow, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a whisper that becomes a roar.